I'm going to do is try to present a piece of work that has been carried out by a number of different people across the whole of the iBUILD project to try and work out how we can use this notion of value and the different value that is created from infrastructure to actually go through a process of then using that to develop new business models that might underpin local infrastructure. And right at the start of the putting together the iBUILD project, there were a number of different themes. So we had themes on interdependence, on value, on scale and local delivery, and those were all sort of integrated through a number of different case studies, some of which you've heard about already this morning. And we were developing this idea of co-creation and working in novel ways with researchers and practitioners from different disciplines. And if you keep in mind those sort of icons, what we tried to do then was to try and develop this framework using all of those different themes from the iBUILD project. So it's very much about finding ways of identifying interdependency and how we might utilise those in the generation of a new business model. It's thinking about scale and the influence and impact of scale on those projects. And it's thinking about how we do that in a collaborative fashion with the different stakeholders in the process, and also how we might draw upon the very different case studies that we've created across the three centres. And hopefully I'll give a broad run through where we've got to and the framework and how it works, and then we'll work in a workshop so that you can actually get a look at that hands-on. So just relating that then to the report, this is, there's more information and writing about this in recommendation 14, so the final recommendation in the report. So it's sort of trying to capture what I've just said in one sentence. It's about developing new business models by collaborating with a wide range of stakeholders, integrating that broad set of values and using that to design different engineering solutions. And more circular than that, that sounds very linear, but it's looking at the influences of those on what we actually do. And within the report, the framework has been very nicely drawn to look like this. However, as I talk it through, I'm going to use the sort of old version that we drew up and didn't actually look so pretty, but actually, one, I've been a bit lazy and reused some old slides, and two, actually there's a few details in here that are actually quite important when actually explaining the process in detail. So I will give a quick run through and then look at the stages step by step using an example. So there is this, we start somewhere with the development of infrastructure. It might be an idea or it might be a particular problem that we want to address. We then take that idea or the problem and that we consider what the desired outcomes we want to achieve. We might also consider what enables our particular infrastructure, what are the constraints, and then we might consider a number of different options. And we called those options interventions. And in our process then, our process of trying to identify the value or the relative values of those different options are that we propose to do a value map. So these are the maps, so that we actually take the infrastructure intervention and we map with time and space the different values that are created for So it's what and for whom over different timescales and different spatial extent. And that will become clearer when I use the example. And from that, we draw out this notion of value proposition and the value network. Who are the stakeholders involved? And from that, we can start to draw out what the different funding and financing options might be available to that particular value network, and then formulate the business model. But then crucially, once we've been through that, we then need to actually challenge ourselves to say, okay, we've got these different options, but do they really achieve the desired outcomes? And if they do, actually, could we do better? Could we really challenge ourselves and do more? And could we do that by, for example, exploiting interdependencies to a greater extent? Or could we actually engineer the intervention differently to get greater value? And the example then that I'm going to use to try and take us through this framework is to look at drainage infrastructure. It might sound a bit dull, but, you know, bear with it. So this is infrastructure that is perhaps dealing with the problem of surface water flooding. And certainly if you've been a member of the Leeds Centre or a member of the Newcastle Centre, we've experienced this within the lifetime of iBUILD. So the desired outcomes then are very simplistically reduce flooding, meet planning regulations. There may be a whole host of other things. And the enablers and constraints are things like planning, they're things like what technologies are available, what's the cost, and again, there may be others. And traditional solutions to that will be pipes, essentially. So just to illustrate that, hopefully, okay. Oh, I don't have a pointer, I don't think, but the map at the top left is Newcastle, and the top red sort of dot from Google Maps is Northumberland Street, which is the picture on the top left. That is Northumberland Street during it's a very typical place in a city. It's very grey, it's got boring shops in it, and that's what it looks like when it rains. But that isn't the only problem. Spatially, it's not just Northumberland Street that has an issue. If you look at the map again, the sort of dot a bit further down towards the river, actually when we experience the extreme rainfall event, we've got the picture here and the little video clip. So those are part of the wider scale of the impact of surface water flooding. And then furthermore, if you imagine that all flows downhill, it ends up in the river there and in the Tyne. So that's the sort of problem we're talking about. And the traditional interventions then to address that problem, as I say, are pipes. So I've taken a bit of liberty here because they're not entirely addressing the surface water issue, but bear with me. So we've got pipes, and ultimately we've got them then discharging into the river, and you've probably all seen the pipes on the top right, these large pipes that get put down probably underneath roads, and you end up with this diversion issue. So highly disruptive, maybe not entirely satisfactory solution, maybe it is for a while, but if we were then to do this value map for those pipes, so essentially what we've got then is this point here, oops, sorry, I could just do with the pointer. This point here is the point at which the pipes are constructed, and also the position where the pipes are constructed. So in terms of the value that's created by those, obviously at the point of construction, that creates value for pipe suppliers. There may be some individuals who will have reduced flood risk and some businesses, and it's advantageous economically to the water company. And environmentally, there may be also positive value for the water company. However, this is not negative time, we haven't invented that yet, but this is impact. There's disruption due to installation, which is an economic problem, it's also an environmental problem, and a bit of a distance from the pipes, there is a problem with the water quality discharge to the river. Ooh, thank you very much. So, actually quite a limited number of organisations in that value network. And so if we were coming then to look at the value proposition and the value network from those pipes, from which we're going to construct, we're going to look at what the funding and financing options are and what's the business model for those pipes. Actually, our options are pretty limited. So we've got the water companies, the local authority. If we were doing a new development rather than putting these into Northumberland Street, we've got developers and we've got potential sources of grant funding from central government or from third-party grants. But essentially, all we're actually delivering is flood risk mitigation. That is it. And when they're in there, Northumberland Street looks exactly like it is now, just with less water. So, using our framework then, what we should do next is to challenge ourselves and to say, have we achieved our desired outcomes? Well, yes, I suppose we have. We might not have actually done so for a very long period, but we have for the time being. But could we do better? And could we do better is actually, how about considering green infrastructure? So, by that we mean, instead of concrete pipes, we might put in something that looks like this, which actually holds and stores the water on the surface instead of channeling it underneath the ground and discharging it through to the river. The interesting thing there is it slightly changes the governance in this situation, because as far as surface water is concerned, is when it's on the surface, it's the local authority's problem or ownership. As soon as it goes below the ground, it's the water company's ownership. And we did have an interesting discussion in one of the iBUILD events about if your water company is owned by a Chinese company, do the Chinese own your water? Discuss, but not for now, I guess. So actually this maintains the water within the local authority's governance, and because it is stored and filtered through the soil, once it ends up in the river, it ends up rather cleaner than it might do if it was discharged very quickly. And it applied to Northumberland Street. Instead of Northumberland Street basically looking like it does now but with no water, actually it looks like the bottom right. No killer bees, but actually that is an artist's impression of Northumberland Street with green infrastructure. And I probably actually don't really need to say much more about the additional value that's created from green infrastructure over and above the concrete pipes that we might put in. But if we were then to map that, you've then got essentially a whole lot of different values, not just economic and environmental, but you're creating social value, greater health and well-being because it's a much nicer place to be, potentially the air quality is better, you're creating perhaps a cultural space, the aesthetics are much better, etc. So that then you can immediately see that the value proposition has been totally changed and the network has been extended markedly. So therefore, the funding and financing opportunities have been greatly increased. So your capacity to be innovative in terms of the business model you might use, green infrastructure is very much greater. So I think that is possibly what I have got there. And so the alternatives then, again, this is the alternative that's in the diagram in your report, include all those different possible people as part of the value network, and they include the non-monetary contribution to the business model that John was talking about before lunch, where you imagine that individuals might contribute labour and time in order to create some of these green features. It might be fairly modest, but they could become involved in a way that they can't do currently with those pipes. And they may get involved in the construction, they may get involved in the maintenance. So as you can see, it creates a much richer sort of and diverse picture of a business model that can be created, and the services that are generated by that green infrastructure aren't just flood risk mitigation. They include recreational space, improved public realm, wildlife corridors, etc. So, in order then to look at the business model that is possible, what we've created, or what John has created and his team have created at Birmingham, is an online resource that we've already seen in one of the presentations. So in order to be able to actually construct the business model, there are these different mechanisms for value creation in this online tool. There's the different organisational structures, funding and financing mechanisms that you could all use, or anyone could use, via the iBUILD website. So that's a very quick run through that whole framework on how you might be able to use value to create this new business model. But what we have found with working with iBUILD is that and all its diversity will not be created by a few people sitting in a darkened room. Actually, what you really need to get all that diversity out is some sort of co-production process. So, what you're doing, whatever infrastructure you're trying to look at, the tools that you need to do that will change. And there are some interesting posters next door on different experiences of this co-production. But they include, some of those visualizations. People need to be able to see what the different opportunities are. You need to get people talking in the room, and they often don't talk the same language. And so this whole process of developing this business model isn't quick, but it's something that hopefully you'll have seen and realise is actually really worthwhile.